Welcome to Car Audio Fabrication. In this episode, we will be building a custom subwoofer box using a custom box design from CarAudioFabrication.com. This custom box for two 12-inch subwoofers will feature a double baffle, internal 45s, a slot port, additional bracing, and we're going to even add some additional custom baffle work. As always, we're going to show you the whole process step by step. Let's begin. To begin our project, we start with several manageable sizes of pieces of wood. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you may not have access to a truck, so having a local hardware store cut the wood down for you will allow you to bring it home in a smaller vehicle. Since my box design is 13.5 inches tall, I doubled that value to about 27 inches and then had the store cut the wood down to several 28-inch pieces. I measure out the width for a couple of the panels and then draw this line using a T-square. I'll be using a table saw for this project, but you could also use a handheld circular saw. When using a table saw, I always double check any measurements by measuring from the fence to the edge of the saw blade. Cutting each board is a somewhat tedious process, but we simply follow each page of our design to make each piece of the enclosure. Our design requires that we make several 45-degree pieces for the corners of the enclosure. We make these by first setting our table saw blade at 45 degrees. After making a cut, we'll adjust our fence another 3 inches over in order to accommodate for the 3-inch width of the 45-degree piece. We then flip our board and make another pass, which gives us our 45-degree corner. With each of the pieces for our enclosure complete, we can now move on to laying out our front baffle and cutting out circles in the port opening. Our design gives us dimensions to the center of each circle along with the diameter. I have the design open on my cell phone and I'm using it in order to draw out the dimensions for these center points. I also draw the dimensions for the port. Since this is a double baffle design, I'm going to be lining up the two pieces together. This way, when I drill the center of each circle, they're perfectly in alignment. I also drill holes in each corner of the port, which will allow me to start my jigsaw. Here I'm using a router with a circle jig in order to cut out a perfect circle for our subwoofer. One board will use the cutout diameter for the subwoofer, whereas the other will use the overall diameter. This will give us a flushed in look. Now let's turn our attention to cutting out the port. To cut out our port, we'll use a jigsaw and simply cut along the lines. You could use a straight edge in order to ensure that you're perfectly straight. When I build boxes, I use the Fukuda router tool in order to ensure that my edges are straight and that my corners are perfectly square. More details about this special tool, along with all the other materials and tools used, can be found down in the video description. Do understand that you don't have to use this tool, and you don't have to use a router in order to build your box, but using these tools leads to a better result and it opens up more customization options. For example, I'm using this tiny roundover bit to smooth over the hard edge on the outermost baffle. You could also do this with sandpaper, but it would be more time consuming and not as accurate. I used a similar roundover bit on the port opening for smoother airflow. I also went a little deeper into the wood to leave this hard edge that can be used to trim our carpet perfectly later. I also used this bit on the port entrance within the box. I recommend rounding over these corners, but once again you could use sandpaper to do so. Finally, I used a rabbiting bit to add this notch to the corner of our side pieces. This will also come in handy later when we wrap the enclosure and carpet. With the detail work complete on our subwoofer box pieces, we can now start the assembly process. I start with gluing the two front baffle pieces together. I then clamp the pieces until the glue dries. If you don't own clamps, drills and screws are a good alternative. Next, I glue and clamp the front baffle to the bottom piece of the enclosure. Note that I've painted part of the port black prior to assembly. Here I am attaching a brace to the front face of the subwoofer box. This brace helps support the weight of the subwoofers and it makes sure that the box does not flex. Flex within an enclosure is bad because you lose acoustical energy. After gluing and clamping the sides and rear of the enclosure, I add in the 45-degree corners. Now our box is really starting to take shape. At this point, we just need to add one final side to the enclosure. I add a good amount of wood glue, spread it out, and then apply the last side. After clamping or screwing this side of the enclosure on and allowing the wood glue to dry, our box is now complete. Or is it? Even though this box is completely ready for you to add your subwoofers and start bumping, I think that we still need to add that custom touch. You see, this area here is very plain looking. Let's see if we can come up with something to spice it up. Our show sponsor, Mobile Solutions, manufactures several different templates called Smart Templates. I'll be using this shape, which is called the curves. To use this template shape, I first trace around it onto a new piece of wood. After rough cutting this piece of wood with a jigsaw, I stick double-sided template tape to my template. This template tape allows me to temporarily adhere my template to our new piece of wood. Next, I use a flush trim bit on the router table, which allows me to create a perfect copy of the CNC cut template. I take my new wooden piece and protect it with this protective tape made by Tessa. After trimming that tape, I also protect the sides with this orange masking tape. Finally, I apply some double-sided tape to the front of the box and then apply our new shape to that tape. This shape is going to act as an accent to the front of the enclosure. I've protected it with all this tape in preparation for the next step. We want the shape to actually appear like it's part of the box, so we're using body filler to mold it in. After applying the initial coat of body filler, we're using this special tool called a smart spreader in order to contour it. Before the filler is dry, we remove all of the protective tape. Once the body filler has dried for about 15 minutes, we'll sand it smooth. Once we're done sanding, we'll carefully pry the insert out. Now, I've actually skipped the carpeting process in this video because it is somewhat time-consuming, yet relatively simple. If you'd like to see carpeting in depth, you can check it out in the video link in the video description. What's important for us to note is that because of the added carpet, I can no longer fit the insert into our body filler. To account for this, I'm using this material compensation rabbiting bit set. These bits allow me to remove the perfect thickness of material to account for the carpet and vinyl on the insert. One pass on these bits adds this step, which I then remove using a flush trim bit. Now you can see that our insert press fits in perfectly. To add one more bit of flair before I wrap this piece in vinyl, I'm adding a 45-degree chamfer to the inside perimeter. Once our piece is wrapped in vinyl, it fits perfectly into the front insert of the enclosure. Since this box is going in a Bronco, I selected this size of text that will be used for an embossed logo. I'll be doing the embossing using a piece of speed foam. This foam has an adhesive backing which allows me to stick it on the inside of the template shape. I then tape the logo to the front of the foam and cut it out using a sharp knife. With the foam completely cut, I carefully peel the excess foam away. Now that the foam is perfectly cut, we're ready to do our final bit of upholstery. I apply upholstery adhesive to the back side of a piece of vinyl along with the front of the enclosure. Once the adhesive becomes tacky, I apply the vinyl and work it into the embossed lettering using firm pressure. After trimming the excess away, our embossed logo is finished. We insert our custom insert and our box is completely done. This box was a ton of fun to build and it turned out great. I love this added custom accent. If you would like to build your very own custom subwoofer box, be sure to visit caraudiofabrication.com for your own custom subwoofer enclosure design. Once again, all the tools and materials for this build can be found in the video description. Thank you again for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please slam that like button. I'd really appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, I have tons of car audio related videos that teach you every step of the fabrication process. You can check out some of my previous projects by clicking the links on screen. Or, if you're on mobile, there's links down in the video description. A special thanks goes out to Emmanuel Valletta, Andrew Mallett, Eddie Clark, Richard Fink, Mark Prasil, Truman, Jaime Ortiz, Christopher Martinson, Jerry Gibson, and Jason Marble, along with all the other Patreon supporters. Thank you for your assistance in making this video.